Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Emily, the host of Radical Embodiment. I am here with Katie Sorka. Katie, thank you for being here.
Thank you
And I
for
think I
having
just
me.
messed up your last name.
No, it's perfect.
Oh, we even practiced it. I'm just so nervous. Okay, good. Katie is an embodiment guide and an energy healer, and I know her from an intimate women's community that we're both a part of. And so I'm just really grateful to get to dive into on a more intellectual conversational level with her and get to have her on the podcast, particularly Katie, because you work in the world of embodiment. So I'm excited for what you are going to bring us today.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like to start with the question. It's kind of a big question, but everyone has their own way of languaging, defining what embodiment means to them. So would love to have you share with us what embodiment means to you.
Yeah, I love this. To me, embodiment is having a deeply connected relationship with your body. And by that, I mean, you know your body's sensations, you feel them, and you're there with them. You don't try to control them. You don't try to run from them, whether they're good or bad, pleasant, unpleasant, especially the unpleasant feelings we try to numb and scroll social media, drink wine, go shopping, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But having a relationship also means having a conversation with your body, like being able to tap into what your body is telling you. And I think being present is a very big factor to being embodied to me, because we always want other people to be present with us, right? So why can't we be present with ourselves?
Yeah. And then like what a gift it is and can be and continue to be when we can really gift ourselves the opportunities of being present with ourselves and with our body. And I love how you language that of it's not about trying to change or manage the sensations, the feelings that are coming in your body. It's just actually providing the moments, the space to be with what is.
Exactly. Yeah. Not making story, not trying to figure out what it is. Just can I sit with me and who I am and what my body is telling me?
Yeah. I
Ooh, not
love,
easy.
what's that?
So it's not easy.
No, no, it's not. I often will, and I briefly said this, but I share with clients whenever they start working with me, because the work I ask, and I'm sure that you ask your clients to do, it's not a simple, it's not like a, oh, this is going to be a feel good, woo kind of thing. Not that we're just wanting to linger in discomfort, yet most people, most folks have not spent much time in their body or with that discomfort. And I really believe it's a courageous path. It takes a lot of courage to consciously choose to be with yourself and be with your body. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's so brave.
Yeah.
We're taught to not be with ourselves. We're taught to take care of other people first, pay attention to other people's needs. So for you to sit down and say, hey, what's going on here? And take care of that first, so then you can bring it to other people. Yeah, I agree with you. It's very courageous.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your own story. And I mean, I think you just defined embodiment so clearly for all of us, and to kind of your own path of embodiment and how you got into the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so it'll be 5 years this April when I left my ex-husband. So it was in my marriage where looking back, I now realize from the very beginning, my body was telling me he was wrong to be with, where I was having deep anxiety and I was calling it butterflies, right? So I was overriding my body constantly in my marriage. And it reached a point where I completely felt like I was drowning. I was walking on eggshells all the time. I was crying a lot. I would have anxiety before he'd come home from work, just knowing that he was about to come home, and just not even be able to speak my truth and just share what I was feeling with him without feeling like I was getting pounded down. So all these signs were happening and I was just like, oh, this is just how it's supposed to be. Not realizing that this is not normal in a relationship. So I actually was on a walk one afternoon and I asked myself, how would I feel if I left him?
How would you feel if you left him?
How would I feel if I left him? And internally I said, I would feel free, and I smiled. And I think that was the first time I actually really listened to myself and then took
that just
action.
made me like, gave me chills. It made me tear up. Wow.
Yeah. all that time, my body was like, no, 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 no. My brain kept trying to tell me all the reasons to stay with him. Mm-hmm. So I had that battle.
What do you think? I'm curious, because I was going to ask of what happened, or what do you think helped supported you in stopping ignoring all those signals that were coming? But maybe it sounds like it was more of an organic process if you were just out on a walk. But I'm curious, is there anything that you recall that maybe helped influenced you in asking yourself that question of what would it be like if I left him?
Sure. So after we got married, we actually traveled for a year for his job. So we were moving every 4 months. And so I believe that being away from family and friends was a huge part for me to really sit and be with myself, because every time something happened, I was able to call a friend, call a family member, go do things with people I loved to really take my mind and body out of what was going on. Right. So it was just he and I, and he would go to work and I was working from home, and I would just be sitting in this, and it was just like bubbling up and bubbling up and bubbling up. But I really think that separation from the people I knew and loved really got me to sit with myself more. And then, just going on that walk, I was like, I have to ask this question, because clearly stuff is happening and I feel really awful, but my brain's telling me another thing. So let's just see what my body says when I actually take the time to ask and listen.
And when you received that answer, that seems so clear, of like, you smiled and was like, it would feel free. I'd love to know what happened for you internally after that. Like, where did your mind, thoughts go?
You know what, Emily, I was so calm. And that's how I learned that my intuition comes in calmly. Obviously, what came after that still had so much anxiety, and I had to work through all the things of, what is his family going to think? What is my family going to think? What are our friends going to think? And get to a point of not worrying about that, but just coming back to how calm that answer was, and how calm it was in my body for the first time in a long time to feel that.
It's so beautiful, Katie, because I was thinking of, my head was going to like, oh, like, maybe the mind wanted to push it away, or that felt so scary, but it's beautiful that it just felt calm, that you could just trust then that was your inner knowing.
Sure. And of course, all the mind stuff came back a bit, and I'd spiral, but it was like, go back to that calm feeling, go back to what your body said.
So you had that moment, which sounds really profound, really significant. And then I'm imagining it was, a myriad of, culmination of events to dismantle relationship, move beyond. I'd love to know a little bit more then from there, how you continued to want to deepen that relationship with your body, with your inner knowing and intuition.
Sure. So after I left, I immediately found a therapist because I knew there was a lot that I brought to the relationship that I needed to unpack, as well as kind of unpack what went on in the marriage. And that was the very first time I heard the word codependency. And I was like, oh, Miss Codependent, shoot, that's me. So really understanding my own patterns and understanding why I overrid all of my bodily sensations that I felt, and coming to understand, like, that's just how it was in my family too. Being young and coming to my parents and saying, hey, I'm feeling this way. And they're saying, no, you're okay. Like, how often does that happen? It still actually happens with my parents. So really being able to dive into that and working with a therapist of like, no, your body's telling you something. There's a message here. You just have to listen to it. And just being totally mind blown that was even a thing.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, it is like, until we start to know or uncover for ourselves, or be able to see that lens, it's like, oh, like those feelings are wrong, or you push them away, or you cover up, or like, oh, I'm fine. We override it. Yeah. And
also, a month after I left my ex-husband, I lost my job. So I think that was also a huge blessing in disguise, because I had so much time to sit with myself. Like, I didn't have to save face, go to an office, pretend I was okay, which I know a lot of people have to do, right? So I had time to sit and cry and feel and journal and figure out all the stuff that was coming up within me.
What a gift. But I'm sure it maybe didn't feel
like
then. And so I'm curious too, how would you say like becoming more embodied, opening up this lens, this new way of relating to yourself and being with yourself, how has that impacted, if at all, your relationship with your actual physical body, with the way that you inhabit yourself and inhabit your body, like on a daily basis and broader than that?
Yeah, I say I love my body a lot more because I was trying so hard to disconnect from my body. I felt so disembodied and was just trying to pay more attention to my mind than my body. So it was like I was just a head, right? And now I'm connected to the whole of me. I think that is a huge part of it. And then just understanding that I can trust this body that I'm in at a deep, deep level and understand where my intuition comes from and love that part of me too. And even the anxiety and the stuff that comes up as quote unquote negative signals, like, okay, I'm going to love this part of me too, because this is another message and signal that my body's trying to tell me. So it really had to, again, I come back to having that deeply connected relationship with your body, to what embodiment is to really understanding that and going through that whole process of loving whatever is coming up.
Yeah. What might you offer to someone who is newer in this world, who, you know, if they're in like a yoga class or, you know, listening to meditation and someone's like, drop into your body, it's like, that feels really like foreign. They're like, I don't actually know what that means. And maybe they are struggling with some anxiety, or some uncomfortable sensation that we have. We often language as negative, but just tends to be maybe lower vibration or just more of its discomfort. What, could you offer to them to help them increase their capacity of being able to spend a little bit more time being with that sensation?
Yeah, I think the most simplest thing and the first thing to do is just have awareness. And that's it. So if you're like, okay, I'm feeling anxiety, where is that anxiety showing up? For me, it's typically in my gut. Like, what is that?
Having them locate, like, where in the body.
Yeah, where is it? Is it a tight feeling? Is there a color? Is there a texture? And just stay there. Like, don't try to move it. Don't try to make sense of it. Don't try to write a story about it, but literally just be aware that it's there.
I think that's great. I think it's helpful because you're mapping where it's located in your physical body, which might be new, right, to folks. And also you're getting more curious of the texture of it, right? You're identifying more, okay, is it tight? Is it, like you said, is there a color? Is there sensation? Which I think anytime we're dealing with pain, anxiety, something that it's very helpful, the more we can broaden our vocabulary of how we define it. I think helps be able to actually sit with it more. Because when we're just like, oh, it's anxiety, that's bad, push it away. It's just very different.
Yeah. And I think most people don't realize that the more aware you are and pay attention to it, it actually starts to dissipate.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, there's anxiety. I'm going to go do this thing. And guess what? The anxiety builds and builds and builds. But if you take that moment and actually just feel it and focus on it and focus on it, you're like,
what if somebody's late for a meeting?
Oh, well,
I guess sometimes you're late for something. Do you know what I mean? What if they don't have time at that time? What could they do?
I think, there are certain times where we have to override what's coming up, right? I'm sure there are plenty of mothers, if they listen to this, they have to override what's happening to take care of their children. So I would say dedicate time later on in the day to actually sit and feel what you felt in that moment. I think we all at least have a few minutes before bedtime to sit.
I'm always like bringing up the toilet for some reason.
Okay, that's a good spot too.
Because like we all gotta, we all pee, we all poop. Like,
brush your teeth for 2 minutes.
Brush
2 minutes of being aware.
Those are opportunities that if time is really busy, to just kind of recheck in. So it seems like you've had like a very dramatic life shift then, because now you work as, an embodiment guide and energy healer. So can you kind of walk us through, I'm imagining a lot of inspiration came from your own journey and own transformation, but kind of the steps of how that all has transpired for you.
Yeah. So I got into Reiki, energy healing, as one modality. I wanted to heal myself in all the ways during my divorce. And I had received Reiki plenty of times. So I was like, oh, I'll learn Reiki and use it on myself. And I love that so much that I just continued to learn it and now do it for others. But when I was kind of coming to an end with my therapist, I heard about coaching through, do you know the Angry Therapist, John Kim?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was diving into all of his podcasts during my divorce too. And at the end of them, he always says, if you have a story and want to help others, you can be a life coach. And I was like, I have a story now. And I've always wanted to help people. So I hired my own life coach at the time. And so that got me into doing his program. And then I also worked with Jane Thompson, if you know her, the holistic sex coach on Instagram. And she was really the first piece of getting me into my body with her essentially embodied dance. And that I think is where I saw a lot of change internally of like, wow, movement is amazing, which I always loved dance, but never really did it, shockingly. But yeah, so that brought me deep into my body. And then I met Liz, our dance movement mentor. And I have a really hard time explaining what actually goes down in her basement, but just the transformation that happens at a cellular level. And I wanted to continue with movement myself with clients. So I recently did Michaela Boehm's nonlinear movement training as well.
Awesome.
So
and my other guest, I don't know if you know who Amy Young is. She's a friend of mine. Yeah. You probably weren't in it at the same time, but she completed that training the last year.
Oh, nice. Yeah. It's so good. So yeah, just like all these ways to kind of get into my body. And just developing, just knowing I've always had high intuition too. And so just really coming back to that and sitting with myself in meditation. And I'd say that was my journey to get me into embodiment coaching as well. And bringing all the tools that I've learned to kind of help women guide through the same process.
And I'd love I have ideas and guesses, but all those tools, all those incredible things you have found and sought out support, which I also just want to name for anyone that's essential. We all need support. We're not supposed to do this life alone. Like if you have the resource to hire a coach, hire a therapist, definitely I would encourage you to do so. But support also could just be, a trusted friend or mentor, right? If there is a monetary resource issue. I just always like to just reinforce that none of us are supposed to do this alone, especially when it comes to embodiment and being in our bodies. We need someone to hold us, to help create that safe container, that for our nervous system to feel safe, to be in the discomfort, to go into those uncomfortable sensations. But what would you say, and you could speak for a while or short on this, of what has all of that allowed you to do, to access, to feel in your life as a woman?
Yeah, personally, it's really helped me in my current partnership of understanding the calm I felt around him in the very beginning was actually normal and healthy. And that the calm that I continue to feel, and even if something doesn't feel right, I'm able to voice that. And I really trust myself, I think, is the biggest part of, say if I'm making a decision about something big or small, I'm able to ask myself and I trust whatever comes through. It's not I don't allow my brain to kind of talk me out of it. And of course I'm not perfect. So yes, that happens. But for the most part, I am actually able to really trust what's coming through for me. Do I want to do this? Yes or no? Do I want to eat this? Yes or no? It doesn't have to be a huge thing. And I say working with my clients, because I am so grounded and able to feel myself, I could feel my clients at a much deeper level too. I think that's super helpful of really tapping into their energy and then being able to co-regulate with them if needed.
Totally. It sounds like you have a high level of discernment in maybe, higher situations that maybe have a higher importance, or everyday situations. Do I want to eat this, or do I want to do this activity, which is amazing. And is I think that a lot of people are not able to really discern how it is, what they want. And I think for me, and I would imagine you might agree, but you can let me know of it. Ultimately, we have to know how we feel to know what we want. And I think that's like one of the, you said one of the first steps is awareness, which is key. And so that awareness is even becoming aware of uncovering of how is it actually underneath the surface that I feel. And once you can identify that, I think it supports in, naming what it is you want.
Yeah. And a big thing that I had to learn, and I bring this to my clients now too, is what does a yes and a no and a maybe even feel like in your body? How many times do us, especially as women, say yes when we really want to say no? And then all that feeling kind of bubbles up inside. And you're like, what's happening here? So just even being able to take the time, I had to go through that exercise multiple times. Like, all right, this is a yes, this is a no. And this is what it feels like if I'm kind of iffy and in the middle.
Yeah. Can you walk us through? Is that possible to walk us through, like for listeners a little bit, if that's new? I know everyone is probably going to have their own individual internal response, but could you walk us through how could somebody start to identify their yes, no, and maybe?
Yeah. So one thing that I do is if you picture someone you love standing a few feet in front of you, and then having them come towards you to hug you. Hopefully, if you like hugs, that would be a yes, right? Now, picture someone who you don't really like standing in front of you, and they're coming towards you to hug you. You'll typically get like what
my body's like, I'm like jumping out of my bed right now.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of embodiment, I'm like shutting down. I don't want to hug that person.
Right. And then so think of someone you're kind of neutral with, and then they're coming to hug you, which it could be a yes or a no, but is that possibly a maybe? I mean, I'd stick with the yes and no first, because those are really big. But a lot of times people think that their maybe is actually a no. But they'll still say maybe instead of wanting to get that full no, because they don't really know what that feels like.
Do you think that people are saying maybe because they don't know what the no feels like? Or do you think that they're afraid of disappointing people? Or maybe both?
So much of both. Yeah, definitely the disappointment. I see that a lot. We're all people pleasers in our own way, right? So yeah, but it's being able to trust that no for yourself, always coming back to doing what's best for you first. And you have to,
I would imagine,
disappoint people.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would imagine the more clearly someone can define their yes and no, the more readily they'd be able to say no or disappoint someone, versus when it's murky, it makes it a little, That's a great.
You also just feel like you lose trust, I think, with people if you don't have your yes or no. Like I remember having friends in the past, and I'm sure I've done this too, where they would say yes and then say no, say yes, then say no. I was like, all right, well, you're not reliable. I can't trust you anymore.
Yeah. I wouldn't totally get that. Yeah. Probably because they, want to do things, or they don't want to let you down, and but ultimately, you do lose trust. When they're giving you a yes, but it's probably actually a no. Yeah. And I love thank you, Katie, for breaking down that practice, because it's so simple, that somebody could just play with and visualize. And really what I would encourage listeners is to do that practice a couple more times and really clarify for yourself what really, name it either in a felt sense or in a word, if that's helpful, whatever the way the sensation comes, but name it for yourself of what do you viscerally feel? Because that'll be really helpful for you to continue to track in everyday life circumstances, your yes and your no.
Yeah. And even the yes could just feel like an opening. The no could feel like a wall. So like you're saying, if you're able to describe what that is more clearly, it's so beneficial.
Mine were really strong, because it was somebody I really love and somebody.
I love that you did it as I was saying it.
Oh, I did, of course. Anytime somebody gives a practice, I always try and do it while we're listening down. I really didn't want to hug that person. Don't want to be.
Back off.
Anyway, so I'm curious. I know that you spent some time beginning of last year. I want to say beginning of this year, but we're in 2023 now. About 6 weeks, right, in Guatemala. I'd love to just kind of hear what you were doing there. And I think it was pretty transformational time for you, right?
Yeah. So I had a really hard end of 2021. And I was just going through this really difficult time of kind of not understanding who I am, why I'm here. And so my partner recommended this month-long course in Guatemala that he knew about. So basically I went to witch camp. So I was there for a month and a half, but it was a 4-week course that had daily yoga, meditation, and metaphysical classes. And I lived within a community. We all lived in little pyramids. And basically it was to help you kind of discover who you are and why you're here, which is like, okay, this is the problem I'm having right now. I really need to figure this out.
Yeah.
So the biggest lesson I learned there, which is also is a huge part of my embodiment and why I transformed, is the power of presence. Of like how much it landed in me during a meditation one night that I was not present at all in my life. I was so worried about the past. I had anxiety about the future. I was never here with people or myself. And so just really understanding that when you are in the present moment, actually nothing in your life is wrong. Like things aren't as big as it would make them seem to be. And of course that there are a lot of things that happen and that's not necessarily the case. But if you can take that moment and just be present, like I'm here with you right now. So whatever else is going on is not in my mind, right? Like, this is great. I'm having a fun time with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you can be so present, that really helps you then understand that relationship to your body that I talked about earlier.
That's beautiful. And you know what I feel with that, and again, just saying it's, you know, easier said than done. And it doesn't have to be this, I'm saying that. And also I want to have the duality of, it doesn't have to be so hard and complex to just be present. And there's an immediate that I experience, at least in this moment, and most moments, not always, but this immediate like relaxation to my nervous system that happens when I really just gift myself permission to just be present and to just be present with you, with your eyes, with your heart in this conversation of like, I can exhale. There's more ease. There's less need to try to in any, you know, I mean, here we are on my podcast on an interview, but even in another situation, but particularly this one, there might be some internal motivations of me feeling like I need to prove something or get something accomplished or, you know, have it make sense. And all of those things, not that they're wrong, but they take me out of really being able to fully drop in and be present and relate with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one thing, people are always hoping that some huge transformation is going to happen and they're going to know it. And it's just like one day they're going to be different.
Yeah.
So I also want to name that I didn't just wake up after these 6 weeks in Guatemala. It was like, I am a changed woman. It was little by little and all the subtle moments where, because I was in meditation an hour and a half every day, and because I was just able to have so much time with myself. Again, I was like so lucky that I was able to do this, and I wish I could gift it to everyone. But it was all those little moments that added up to it.
Yeah.
Until one day I was like, oh, I feel different. I notice that I am calm and I am grounded and I am here.
Yeah. I love that. And I appreciate that you say that. And I would imagine you see this in the work you do with your clients. I definitely see it in the work with my clients. It's not normally like one like profound, dramatic, specific moment where like my whole life changed forever. Yeah, I think we have these moments that like the walk that you had, right, when you were in your previous partnership. But I think it's the culmination of multiple moments that might seem insignificant, but there are significant. It's these subtle changes, these subtle conscious shifts that we choose that is what actually leads to true long-term transformation, to feeling different. Like you said, you experience yourself differently.
Yeah. My friend Kimberly said the other day, life is just a series of small moments. I was like, isn't that so true? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious what you might say, this podcast and platform specifically, kind of, I was telling you as we went on before, you know, what I feel really passionately about is helping to shift the narrative that a woman's worth is tied into her weight or her physical appearance. And I really believe the pathway to help shift that is through embodiment. And even the name radical embodiment came from, specifically, I think it's a radical choice, right? We talked about it's courageous to choose to be in your body. And it's not something that, oh, I snapped my fingers. I went to Guatemala, I'm transformed, I'm embodied the rest of my life. No, it's like still the conscious choice. But I'd love for just to hear your take, perspective, your insight, the wisdom that you would have to offer us, Katie, on, the journey of embodiment, the journey of being in your body, and around like specifically like body image and body acceptance. And yeah.
Yeah, I actually want to go back to what you said about it being a choice, because I think that is absolutely huge. That is something I've worked with my therapist on for a long time. Of like, as children, we don't have choice, but as an adult, as a grown woman, we can choose differently. And intellectually, that made a lot of sense to me. And it finally dropped in my body when I was actually in Guatemala of, oh, I could choose to show up differently. So kind of what you're saying of loving your body and not having the weight be your worth. The other day, I was actually dancing naked in front of my mirror. I was like, I want to choose to see the beautiful woman that I am. And I was able to do that. And I cannot say that about myself in many previous years. But it was like, I'm going to choose to see her.
That's what I'm like,
yeah,
how
it was
fun
amazing.
I'm like, next
like
dance
choose
class
it.
Liz.
Yeah. And like we've said earlier, this stuff isn't easy, and it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot. I think I learned in one course that it takes 3,000 reps for something to actually become embodied, which seems like a lot. Yeah. So it's consistent. Like, I'm going to go dance naked in front of my mirror again and choose to see the beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Not have that negativity come up.
Yes. And this, the way you frame that, of choosing to see the beautiful woman and not allowing old, outdated, narrow perceptions to be what's driving your conscious thought.
Totally. And of course they're going to come up, because they do.
We're human. And we live in this world of all of that. Cell phone
comparison. Yeah. It's like, all right, cool. I see that you're there. I'm going to see that you're trying to judge this, but no, I'm going to choose not. I'm going to choose to see the beautiful one. Yeah. Just takes practice.
I love that. And so maybe, anyone listening, if you felt inspired by Katie's share of like dancing naked in front of her mirror, maybe you start with minimal clothing. Maybe you start with like a darker room, with some soft lighting, or almost you can't see yourself in the mirror, would be, some small steps to doing that. But still, like, if only if that like inspires you. But I think that can be a really beautiful gift. And there's something about viewing ourselves naked in the mirror that because it strips away any fashion, any clothing that we're maybe trying to put on in a way of looking a certain way. And we just get to see ourselves in our realness, in our flesh, that I think can be a really beautiful experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a totally different topic that we don't have to go down, but how many women actually look in the mirror at their vulva?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, wow, we don't even know what we look like.
Yes.
And I think we're so beautiful.
Let's talk about it. Are you going to vulva days?
I'm not. I have a workshop, but hopefully next time.
Katie and I, the community we're part of, our teacher is hosting a vulva days coming up in like a week that I'm attending. Let's talk about that. Good. So I'm curious. Yes, I agree. And I'm curious what, may the magic be there for a woman to look at her vulva, to know her vulva?
Oh my gosh. I feel like this is such a deep topic. I think that I'll speak for myself of for so many years, and this is only up until recently, I thought that I was weird, or probably looked gross, or didn't look quote unquote normal. And then realizing that vulvas come in all shapes and sizes and colors. They're all beautiful in their own sense. So I think if we were given this as young women to be able to look at ourselves and just see ourselves in a different light, then we don't have these insecurities. So I think that's one thing that could help with it. But it's our own body. Like this, we bring life through this, and we don't even know what she looks like. And like, that breaks my heart. Years, not too long ago, I didn't even know.
Right. Right. I mean,
But I
it's
think
like
it's
where
just a
our
deep
pleasure
connection.
center
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah.
I even just how you said of like the vulvas do come in different shapes, colors, sizes, all sorts of it to start to broaden your horizon of even to starting with a vulva, which maybe you feel neutral about, maybe you have judgment about, could be a beautiful start to also then encompassing more of all of you. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you compare, like we all come in different shapes, sizes, colors in our physical body, right? So if we can start in one area and expand that out, so much could change.
Yeah. To
I
come.
hope.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's, yeah. We could continue. I'm keep pausing myself because I could go down a long, and have more to ask you on that, but just to also keep, somewhat of a time consciousness to these episodes. I always like to ask the question, of like, as we kind of come to completion of, if someone's desiring to live a more radically embodied life, what would you offer for them?
Yeah, to live radically embodied, I think is to fully live true to who you are. So it's get to know yourself, get to know your body, listen to her over anyone else. And like we mentioned earlier, sometimes we need guidance on that. I needed guidance to understand what my intuition was saying and my own bodily wisdom. But the more you can do and the tools you have for yourself to really get into your body and feel those sensations and emotions, that is the first step to really living embodied.
I love that. I feel like we should have a motto on our fridge of what you just said over everywhere, like your mirror of like saying, like listening to her over everything else.
Yeah, because I could give you tools, but your body might be like, nah, not for me. But they worked for my body, right? So it's like you always got to come back to what works best for you. You know you.
Yes. I love that you even named that. And I think it's important. It's always important to me as like facilitator, as practitioner, coach, to offer suggestions, to give guidance practices, and always bring client back into them trusting they know what's right and best for them.
Yeah, it's all about facilitating self-inquiry instead of me being like, here's the thing, it's going to change your life.
Yeah, because it's not just like, it might not be the one thing. It might not be the thing that you need right now, right? You might not be ready for it. Maybe you need it 5 steps down the road, or I love that. Katie, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story, for being brave in your vulnerability and offering us just a little of your, own personal account. And how can people, if they want to look up and find out more about your work, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at katie.sorka, and my website is katiesorkacoaching.com.
And Sorka is Sroka.
Yeah.
Of course, everything will be linked in the show notes, but
perfect.
Verbally spell. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Any little last bits you want to say before we take off?
Yeah, I'd love to share, since I am a recent non-linear movement facilitator. I just started doing movement and Reiki classes, and I had my first this week, and it went so well. And so I'll be doing those monthly if anyone is interested in movement and energy healing. Awesome. And I also have a group program coming up at the end of February, which I'm taking some of my learnings from Guatemala. It's based on the 4 elements and just getting a deeper relationship with yourself. It includes movement as well. So if anyone's interested in that, it's on my website.
Great. So check out Katie's website to learn more about all of those for sure. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks everyone for listening. And hopefully this inspired you to, 1, for sure, listen to you above everything else. And then maybe 2, to get better acquainted via mirror, via phone. I only said phone just because you can, not necessarily recording, but it's actually helpful for looking at your vulva. It's just easier.
That's true.
On selfie mode. But like getting more acquainted with your vulva, or just with all of your physical body in the mirror. And letting that come from the lens of love and gentleness. So awesome. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and take care.